Warning: some viewers may find the following content to be disturbing. Viewers' discretion is advised. A friend once told me that there were supposed to be 4 new evolutions for Eevee in Pokemon Gold and Silver. The 2 that are already in the game are Espeon, a Psychic type, and Umbreon, a Dark type. The other 2 were dropped from the game. These were Poison and Ghost types. I wasn't fully convinced that this was true, so I decided to see for myself by trying a beta version of Pokemon Gold. The beta ROM was hard to find, because most of the ROMs were either normal, not beta, Japanese, or just didn't work. When I finally found a working ROM, I loaded it up to search for the new evolutions for Eevee. But I wasn't quite sure what to do to get an Eevee to evolve into a Poison or a Ghost type. So I just played the game normally and figured I would just find out at some point. I eventually ended up beating the Elite Four in all of Kanto. The game was pretty much the same, other than a few different locations, dialogue, etc. Oh, and Dunsparce never seemed to appear, but I won't complain too much about that. I don't really like Dunsparce. But by the time I beat the game, I still hadn't figured out how to evolve my Eevee. I tried leveling it up at night, day, in caves, etc. After hours of trying, I finally decided to find the evolutions the easy way. By cheating. I tried to use game shortcodes, but most of them did nothing. So I decided to ask for help online, and somebody on Newsground said he could work on a code that should give me all the items. After a few days, he sent me back a code that I put into the Game Shark. I loaded the beta ROM, and sure enough, the code had given me every single item. I looked through the items, and everything was the same, except for a new item called the Toxic Stone. I knew this was the item I was looking for. I used it on my Eevee and nothing happened. The game simply told me it has no effect. I tried over and over, but nothing. I was pissed. Was this all I got after I worked through this damn game? There has to be something I did wrong. So I thought maybe the NPCs could help me out. I got the typical text from them. Man, that Team Rocket sure is persistent. I love my Jigglypuff. Have you ever visited the radio tower in the Kanto region? But one NPC told me something that stood out. Did you know there's a stone that can evolve a Pokemon after it has fainted? This was where I went wrong. I had to use the Toxic Stone on my Eevee after it had fainted. At least I hoped so. My Eevee didn't take any time to be defeated, especially since it was around level 40, and then I was in the level 60 area after it was defeated. I went into my bag and used the stone on my fainted Eevee. What's this? Eevee's evolving! Yes! Yes! Eevee has evolved into Zombreon. This was not what I was thinking. Zombreon looked like a completely normal Eevee, but it was green and parts of it were missing. Also, its cry was just a lowered version of Eevee. Oh, and once it evolved, I learned a new attack called Zomb Bite. But this was all I worked for, a recoloured Eevee? Come on! I calmed down a bit, and I decided to test out in the tall grass near New Barktown. A wild Sentret appeared and I threw out Zombreon. I figured it would be pointless to use a move I'd used a million times, like Tackle or Flash, so I used Zomb Bite instead. The attack animation was rather odd. It looked like Bite, but with 2 poison symbols flashing near the teeth. The attack was a one-hit, according to the text box. But what was strange now was the game was asking me if I wanted to nickname Sentret, and it told me that Sentret was sent to the PC. I didn't use a Pokeball, so why did the game say that I caught the Sentret? I rushed over to the PC, and I checked for the Sentret. It wasn't a normal Sentret, it was now green, a poison type, and it knew Zombite. Wait, I know where this is going. Every time I use the attack Zombite, which I figured means Zombie Bite, the enemy Pokemon will get infected. Considering Zombreon was just Zombie and Eon, it was quite obvious. I wondered what would happen if I infected a trainer's Pokemon. I used Fly to go to one of the routes in Kanto that I skipped most of. I ran into a trainer. The battle started, the opposing trainer threw out a Kadabra and I immediately chose Zombite. It was a one-hit KO, but rather than throwing out the next Pokemon, the opposing trainer just came out to the field and said, "What did you do to my Pokemon?" The battle was won and I received the XP and money. After the battle, the trainer was gone. Just gone. In fact, no other trainers were there either. This is beginning to creep me out a little bit. I walked around the area to try to look for another trainer, but I found nothing. When I walked into the grass, a wild Kadabra appeared. Even though this wasn't a normal Kadabra, it was now green and zombie-like the Sentret was. And I didn't even have to fight it, it just lost all of its health, and the game told me I caught it. I begun to get a little creeped out, so I began to head back to the town, when another wild Pokemon appeared. It was a normal looking Raticate. I didn't want to fight it, so I pressed run. It didn't work. Zombreon is staring at the foe hungrily, the game told me. Then the Raticate attacked Zombreon with Bite, but after the attack animation played, the game said Zombreon countered the battle with Zombite, and the Zombie Bite animation plays, causing the Raticate to lose all of its health and join my team. I wanted to get the heck out of this area immediately, so I went into my team to use Fly. But I was not expecting what I saw. All of my Pokemon were green and zombified, and now all of them knew Zombites. I made my Lugia fly me to Saffron City. When I got there, all the NPCs were there, which helped me to calm down a bit. I decided to go into the Pokemon Center to check the PC. And when I did, the game let out an ear-splitting beep that made me jump a little. In front of the Pokemon Center was the trainer with the Kadabra that I defeated earlier. A text box came up, "That's the man that hurt my Kadabra," when the trainer ran to the corner of the Pokemon Center. A man sitting on one of the seats walked up to me and said, "Don't worry, I'll stop him." Then I was forced to battle. He threw out an Arcanine and I chose Zombreon. I tried to use Tackle and it worked, but after the animation finished, the game said Zombreon used Tackle, followed by Zombite. The battle ended, and when the game went back to the Pokemon Center, a greenish sprite of the Arcanine stood next to the man. "What happened to my Arcanine? What are you?" the man said before running out of the Pokemon Center. The Arcanine walked up to me, and the game told me Arcanine was sent to the PC, and then the Arcanine disappeared. This was starting to get really creepy. I tried speaking to the trainer in the corner, but all he would say was, "Please, no more." I tried speaking to the nurse, and all she would said was, "Get out of my Pokemon Center." I checked the PC, and surely enough, I had zombie versions of all the Pokemon from earlier. When I backed out of the PC, I noticed a new option on it, called Release All. I tried pressing it, but it told me, not enough Zom Pokemon. Darn. I walked out of the center, and the speakers of my computer were filled with a large barrage of high and low pitched beeps, and all the NPCs outside of the center ran towards the exits of the city. I tried to speak to one of them, but they were moving too quickly to do anything. When I walked out of the town, there were no trainers around anywhere. I figured if I went to a different town, everything would be normal. So I made my Lugia fly me to Goldenrod. When I landed there were no NPCs, but the music wasn't even playing. I tried walking into a building, but the game told me, the door is locked. I tried a few other buildings, but they were locked too. So I went to the Pokemon Center. The door opened as usual, and I went inside. Nobody was inside of it, but I noticed something new. There was what appeared to be a radio on the counter. When I interacted with it, a text box came up. "Beware of strange Pokemon. Trainers from the Kanto region have been reporting strange green Pokemon attacking and infecting other Pokemon and trainers. Remain indoors and avoid all contact with strange Pokemon and people." Followed by, "I'm so lonely." I figured there was nothing to do here, so I went to the second floor. On the second floor there were a bunch of NPCs standing still facing the stairs. Once I got to the top of the stairs, a loud beep played and a text box said, "Get out of here, you aren't normal." A trainer standing in front of the crowd ran up to me and a battle started. The opposing trainer sent out a Ditto, and I sent out Zombreon. I tried to use Flash, but instead the game told me Zombreon spat poison at Ditto, and then Ditto was defeated. After the battle, the man just backed up into the crowd. Suddenly Zombreon walked out, and the game said, "Zombreon cannot wait any longer." And then Zombreon ran into the crowd, touching every trainer and Pokemon. When it touched Pokemon, they would simply turn green, but when it touched trainers, the game would let out the loud beep, and then the trainers would vanish. Once all the trainers were gone, and all the Pokemon were now infected, a text box appeared saying Jigglypuff, Abra, Ditto and Clefairy were sent to the PC, and then the Pokemon disappeared. I checked my trainer card because I remembered the trainer from earlier saying that I wasn't normal. Surely enough, my trainer was zombified too. I felt kinda sick. Would Game Freak really do something like this? I shook off the feeling, and I tried to fly to a different town, but the game told me, Lugia is too weak to fly. Great. I went back into the center to get a new flying Pokemon from my PC. But when I looked inside, all of the Pokemon in the PC were now infected. I tried taking out my Pidgeotto, but pressing the withdraw button would just play a buzz sound that usually played when you aren't allowed to do anything. I couldn't move Pokemon either, so there was only one thing left to do. I saved the game first, then I pressed the Release All button. The game asked, "Would you like to release all the Zom Pokemon?" Yes. All Zom Pokemon have been released. I checked the box, and now all my Pokemon in the PC were gone. I was confused. What is the purpose of an option like this? I walked outside, and I got quite the surprise. Parts of buildings were on fire, windows were boarded up, and NPCs were running from green Pokemon. I couldn't interact with the Pokemon or the trainers, so I decided to walk out of the town. The area outside of the town was similar in a way. A couple of the trees were on fire, and there were grey particles moving in front of the screen, which made it look like the screen was all smoky. I walked into the tall grass. It didn't cause any Pokemon to appear, but I could talk to small amounts of NPCs that were standing around. They would say things like, "I had to hit my poor Pikachu with a stick, he just wouldn't stop trying to bite me. Who started this? I want this all to end. I want to go home to my family." I eventually walked to Violet City, to Cherry Grove City, and finally, to New Bark Town. This was the only sort of place that was normal. The trainer that walked around outside of the buildings weren't there anymore, and I went into the lab to see if it was empty. It wasn't. Inside was a single professor. Once I took a step forward, an exclamation mark appeared above his head and he walked towards me. I finally finished it. A gene that protects my Pokemon from that poison stuff, that's caused all the Pokemon to turn strange. This is where it all began, and this is where it will end, he said, causing a battle to begin. The game said that Professor Elm would like to battle. He sent out a level 86 for Alligator, and I threw out Zombreon. I knew Zombreon was too weak to handle this, so I swapped to Lugia. When I tried to use any attack other than Zombite, Lugia would end up using it anyways, and when Lugia did, I would get a message that said it had no effect on Feraligatr. After this, the opposing Feraligatr used an attack called Cure. That was super effective, and defeated Lugia right away. My next Pokemon was Typhlosion, but the battle went exactly the same as it went for Lugia. I tried using Flamethrower, but instead Typhlosion used Zombite and was instantly defeated by Cure. The battle went on like this until I got to Zombreon. I pressed Zombite at this point because I knew it was coming. It didn't work, and Feraligatr used Cure. Zombreon was brought down to 1 health. The game said, Zombreon refuses to give up. Zombreon uses Struggle. Feraligatr was instantly defeated, and Zombreon was defeated by the recoil. Professor Elm came up and said, "No, no, no!" Then the battle ended. After the battle, Elm took a step back and said, "I lost. It's over. It's all over. I want to end this pointless game right now." He then ran out of the lab. After a few seconds, a text box said, "You hear a loud bang in the distance." I think I know what that meant. I went outside and a text box came up. Why did this have to happen? I didn't understand who said this, since there wasn't anybody around. I thought maybe somebody was in my character's house, so I headed there. Inside was my mum. She was sitting on a chair in the house as usual, so I tried to interact with her. She definitely wasn't doing anything usual. It's Mum. She's not moving. This text actually made me feel sad, but I didn't expect the screen to cut to black after the text box closed. The screen faded from black into the opening screen where you get to enter your character's name. But my character just stood there, and the text below said, "All of this is my fault. All those poor people. My Pokemon. Eevee." But was it really my fault? My character glared at the screen for a split second. It cut to black. Then the game went straight to the credits. Nothing was different, all the Pokemon were there as usual. Once the credits were over, the emulator just froze. Now whenever I try to load the beta ROM, the emulator just freezes. I realised that this was only one of the 2 evolutions for Eevee. The Ghost one was probably in Pokemon Silver. I can't imagine what would happen with this evolution of Eevee. And I don't really want to know. And that, my dorks, was Zombreon. A Pokemon, I guess, hacked or beta ROM creepypasta. My final thoughts and opinions on this story? I like it, honestly. It's a very realistic kind of thing. Obviously, as you all know, and you should know, Game Freak that makes a Pokemon will never do something like this. But it could happen, honestly. Everything, the screenshots, people could really make this into a ROM and make it happen. The story was good, I liked it. Well, some cliches like beta ROM and other things like that. It's really good though, it's unique. I've never seen a Pokemon creepypasta do this before, have a zombie apocalypse. I'd really love somebody to make this into a ROM, like a game you can play. Somebody please do that. Yeah, the story was good, grammar was good. I love the screenshots, they look really authentic and I showed some of them off here in the video. So if I had to give the story a final rating, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. It's not bad for a Pokemon creepypasta, I like it. Obviously there are some cliches like a beta ROM and whatnot, and the whole concept does seem a little bit silly, but I guess I like some of the things that are quite zany. I enjoy the story, and it's really good, especially compared to Lavender Town Syndrome. Ew. Anyways, this is all from me, the Dark Author. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell so you can stay up to date with the latest videos, and comment down below what was your favourite part of the story, and what would you change, what's your opinion on it. Anyways, this has been the Dark Author. I'll see you guys in the next video. I am now signing off.